Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we have a comprehensive guide on one of the new decks from DZ BT02 Illusionless Strife, and that is Blangdmire. This art is by Daisuke Uzuka and it must be good, right? So here we go. We're going to go through the deck and essentially how I'm building Blangdmire at the moment, and let's just talk about some of the, other inclusions that we can change into the deck. I think this deck is pretty good at the moment. It has a really good place in the meta, and I think going forward with other support and PR support, I think this deck is really good too. If you guys need any coaching for the BCS season, my Metafy link is in the bottom right hand corner. Feel free to book a session and we can get started. If you guys haven't already, click that subscribe button for all notifications on this channel. So this deck is mainly built to essentially get your opponent to a threshold that you want by turn 4. And this is why I've built it this way. And pretty much if your opponent is at 4 damage, they're pretty much dead, right? So anyways, just going through the deck log, I'll link it in the description as well. So the deck log code is 1TW1L. So going through the ride line, it's actually pretty self-explanatory. The good thing about this ride line is that it's the same all the way up to grade 3. So essentially the grade 1 and the grade 2 essentially do the same thing, right? So when the grade 2 rides over the grade 1, when the grade 3 rides over the grade 2, essentially what you do is you reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, put all grade 1s or greater into Soul, which is mandatory by the way. So if you see PGs, unfortunately it has to go into Soul, and then essentially if you put 2 or more cards, then you draw 1 and shuffle your deck, right? Same thing in grade 2. So when Blangdmire rides over, reveal top 3, put all grade 1s or greater. If you put 2 or more cards, then you draw 1. Blangdmire, the boss unit of the deck, has 2 abilities. So Auto Vanguard Circle, when it attacks, you bind 2 or more up to 4 cards from your soul face down. Pretty important because then it's less information that your opponent knows. So you kind of want to bind triggers. So you bind up to essentially 4 cards face down. You may draw a card. The may is you will draw a card. Like there's no reason not to draw a card. If you bound 4 or more cards, your opponent chooses 2 of their rear guards and binds them face down. This unit then gains plus 5k until end of battle for every 2 face down cards in your bind zone. So it's immediately if you bind 4, it's plus 10, 23k, pretty ridiculous, right? Then the Divine skill, Auto Vanguard Circle, at the beginning of the guard step of the battle that this unit attacked. If your bind zone has 8 or more face down cards, you may have this unit gain a crit until the end of turn. If you do, your opponent cannot call or play Sentinels from hand until the end of turn, which means that this applies for your other upcoming attacks after this as well. And then choose one of your opponent's Vanguard, and until the end of your opponent's next turn, all of your opponent's and that unit's abilities are nullified. So essentially, no stride breaks for Shiranui, no stride breaks for Luard. It's just over, right? Persona Ride will still activate, but pretty much they get no abilities, and if they don't have any abilities, if they don't write another copy, it's pretty much over, right? So pretty strong grade 3, I gotta say. I think the way that you have to approach Blangdmire, you have to maximize the use of the Divine skill, which I'll go over as to why I've built the deck this way, right? The main deck, 3 Persona Rides, because Persona Ride in this deck is super omega important. Pretty much if you miss Persona Ride on your turn 4, your Divine skill turn just sucks, right? The good thing is that, if I'm not mistaken, the Divine skill, if you don't give a crit, you can save the Divine skill for the next turn. But pretty much the deck is like, slam and jam, go face, and pretty much you want to get your opponent to a threshold where pretty much everything goes lethal, right? So yeah, Blangdmire, I think that's how it works. Anyhow, you run 4 of the single strike Shatter Colossus. This guy is pretty bonkers. When it attacks a Vanguard, if your bind zone has 4 more cards, you may give it 10k, and if you do, at the end of battle, it goes into Soul. The second ability is that when this card is put into Soul by a card's ability, itself or by something else, you can essentially bind it face down and draw a card if you're on Blangdmire, right? So the good thing is that if, for example, you hit this into damage and then you heal it out, Servant Falcratia, another card that we run in this deck, allows it to put this Shatter Colossus into Soul, and then you bind itself to draw 1 while maximizing the effect of Servant Falcratia to give it plus 15, right? This card is really good. Pretty much if you Soul Charge it, then you can bind it as well because it's, you know, put into Soul by a card's ability. So yeah, multiple applications with this, and in the early game, pretty much hitting for 23 is actually pretty ridiculous, right? So yeah, Shatter Colossus, very good card. Then probably one of the most important cards in the deck, and that is Zamug, and essentially it is a demonic executioner from V series that Dark Regulars plays. So essentially, if you're on a Blangdmire, Vanguard, come +1, reveal the top 3 cards of your deck, put any number of cards into Soul, and this is not grade restricted like the Ride line is. So pretty much put any number of cards into Soul. If you put 1 or more cards, you may draw 1, which is you will draw 1, right? The only time you don't draw 1 is you're afraid of decking out, right? Then auto Rearguard Circle when this unit attacks if you have a grade 3 or greater Blangdmire, which is from grade 3 onwards, and this unit's crit is 1 or less. Energy Blast 3, this unit gains 5k 1 crit until the end of the battle, right? It is very important that if you check crit, you don't want to put it on this card, right? Because you essentially want to split it, right? Because then, you know, both sides will have crit, and yeah, sure, right? That's pretty much how it works. And essentially, if you check double crit, you stack it on the other side, that's already like lethal from 3. So it doesn't, I guess, counteract or, you know, interfere with this card, right? Because this card will always get crit, yeah? I guess the only difference that you would maybe consider is splitting the crit and the power. So the power may go onto this card, but then the crit goes on to another card, but like that's based on the game state, right? This card is really good, especially if you're putting it in front of a Brainwash Swirler. Pretty much your opponent can't PG this because of Blangdmire's Divine skill, and your Brainwash Swirler is massive, and then if you restand it using Evoke Alchemist, this card becomes ridiculously big, right? And that's what you want, right? 4 is the magic number in this deck. Then we run 4 of the EB Cycler, so Tizcar, just really good. Pretty much free 5k shield, count +1, draw 1, or EB3, draw 1. And if you Persona Ray, you can count +1 or EB3. You may Soul Charge 1 until the end of turn, this gains boost. Really important because you want to stack Brainwash Swirlers, so the Soul Charge actually matters, right? So yeah, Tizcar's pretty good. I think this card is really good. So I play a 1 copy of Clean Sweep Dragon, and the best thing about this card is that you're already clearing your opponent's board. You essentially can wipe their board clean, right? You Clean Sweep Dragon, you kill 3, Blangdmire kills 2, and you pretty much board wipe your opponent with 1 card, right? It's really important because this card gains +5 for each card that was chosen for its effect. So it's a base 25, 35 on Persona Ride, and then pretty much if you stand it with Evoke Alchemist, it's a 50k rearguard. Absolutely ridiculous. If it dies, you can put it in with Falcratia and then bring it back with the Cage Order. Really, really strong card. And I think, you know, if you're not playing this card, I think that's super wrong, right? There are times where I'm like, maybe I should like increase this to 2, but I think 1 is a really nice number because you have like other rearguards to, I guess, work with as well. Clean Sweep Dragon, really good, especially in a meta where, you know, it's heavily rearguard reliant. And it's actually really good into Hostage once Festival Collection comes out as well. So yeah, Clean Sweep Dragon, very good. May look to bump to 2 just to be able to see it, right? One of the other utility cards in this deck, ignore the second effect because you'll never get it, because you have to have a grade 4 or greater Vanguard, which you never will. But the first effect is essentially when Servant Falcratia attacks a grade 3 or greater unit, you may choose a Dark States from Soul, put it into Soul, and it gains 5k for each grade of that card. And then, yeah, that's just how it is, right? So pretty much you want to put the single strike Colossus in, or like any of your grade 3s to gain +15, right? Now there's a point in time where if your hand is like a bunch of cages, then you want to put something that is, you know, good for the next turn because you're setting up your soul for the next turn, right? Then you can use the cage to call out Zamug or Clean Sweep or Evoke Alchemist, depending on like what your opponent retires, right? So Servant Falcratia, really, really good because you essentially can set up soul for the next turn Yeah, and it's a big bait stick, right? It's really, really strong. So yeah, that's Servant for Acacia. Evoke Alchemist, this card is busted, right? It's a 15k booster essentially behind Blangdmire. And pretty much when it boosts a Blangdmire, if your bind zone is 4 or more, you can come us one, choose one of your front row rear guards and standard. Immediately gives this deck 4 attacks, and then if your bind zone is 8 or more, then that unit that stood gains plus 15. So as you can see, you know, if you clean sweep with Persona Ride with this, it's like a 50k rear guard, which is yonks, right? You put that in front of like a Brainwash Swirler, and then you soul charge your binder, it's like 60, 70k. You hit a crit, your opponent literally can't guard because they can't use Sentinels, right? Yeah, really ridiculous, yeah? So Evoke Alchemist, really strong. Blangdmire itself is already big because it gains 5k for every 2 face down bind in your bind zone. So, you know, the second time around, your Blangdmire on Persona Ride is 43 by itself, plus 15 is like 58, right? Really, really strong booster. And the applications of this card is really good. You run 4 purely because you want to see it, right? If your opponent kills this thing, it needs a you need a way to essentially get it back. Yeah. In terms of PGs, you run 3 normal PGs and an Elementaria. If you're a new player, don't worry too much. You can still play 4 of the grade 1 PGs that you can find in set 1. Then, Brainwash Swirler. This card is really important purely because of, I guess, the goal that you're setting out for yourself once you get to grade 3, right? This card essentially stacks power, and if you're going first and your opponent's on grade 2 and your Swirler columns are ridiculously big, your opponent's not guarding and gets sent straight to 4. If your opponent goes to 4 and they don't heal down, it's practically over, right? Because essentially your opponent, your opponent has to deal with 2 rear guards with insane amounts of power with crit. It's just not happening, right? Pretty much if you put like double Zamug on both sides on turn 4 and your opponent's at 4 damage and they can't PG, it's pretty much over, right? Like, not a lot of decks are able to essentially get enough advantage to be able to guard 70k numbers on turn 4. It's just not happening, right? So which is why I'm playing Swirler. Swirler allows you to push that threshold much earlier and like with ridiculous numbers, right? Try guarding 30k, 40k on grade 2, it's just not happening, right? So essentially when it's placed on rear guard, you can soul charge 1, and then for every time that you soul charge, because you're grade 3 or greater Vanguard, it gains plus 5, right? So make the booster big, restand with Evoke Alchemist, attack again, and yeah, pretty much send your opponent to 4. If your opponent's at 4, it's pretty much over, right? Because your divine skill is just really, really strong, yeah? So other stuff that we run, so we run the Chalice, so Gratias Gradale, pretty much Persona Ride is really important in this deck. I don't really like playing Bracing Angel Ladder. This deck actually draws quite a bit, so you can actually guard through Shirunui's first stride pretty well. So I think just being able to consistently do what your deck is supposed to do is really important, right? So which is why we play Chalice, because Persona Ride is extremely important in this deck. The only problem is that you might counteract with Cage or Furious Star, but you know, to be honest, like I'm not too worried because this is a one-of. If you draw like a grade 3 Blangdmire, then you better ride that instead. But anyways, we play 3 Cage, essentially Soul Charge 1, choose a grade 3 or less from Soul, call it out, and gains plus 5, right? So which is why Servant for Acacia is really good, because if your opponent like kills your clean sweep, you can put it into Soul, call it back out, gains plus 5. Clean sweep sweeps up stuff and it becomes super big, right? Like 55k. The Soul Charge 1 is really important because then you want to boost your swirlers as well. So pushing that threshold again is really important, right? The triggers, so you run 4 heal, 8 crit, 4 stem deviate, and 3 fronts. I don't play draws in this deck because you're already, you know, going through your deck heavily. Fronts, if you hit a front in the early game, like you're attacking 4 attacks, you hit a front, like pushing that threshold again, just makes it much easier for this deck to accomplish, right? So then the OT, I play Valnut. I think Valnut is super good on the Divine Skill 10. If you check this, it's like over, right? You put it on a Zamug like EB3 gains crit. Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous, right? But yeah, like pushing your opponent to essentially 1 extra attack without them being able to use PGs is just too strong, right? There is like a discussion to run the blue OT, but I think red OT is really good in this deck. But yeah, either or depends on your preference, right? So yeah, that is pretty much the Blangdmire list. So there's like a few other considerations. So you can play Laminia if you don't have Tiskar, kind of works the same. But essentially the second skill allows you to soul charge, and as you can see, it boosts swirlers, right? You can look at playing another Servant for Kracia, but I think 3 is a really nice number. There is the Steam Artist, and the reason why I'm not playing this card is because I want to be able to push my opponent to 4, and this would take up Swirler's spot, right? So that's like the only spot that you would change, but I think Swirler is just too good to be able to accomplish the goal that I want to set out for this deck on turn 3, right? Again, like I explained before, Elementary Sanctity, if you don't have that, you can play a 4th PG. Just noted to just then, if you don't want to play Valnut, you can play the blue OT, that's all good. I find that the Dark States OT is kind of counterproductive in this deck because your Vanguard already gets crit. It's like, yeah, I don't think it's necessary, right? You can play two of each of the effect heals if you find that, you know, it's necessary in your metagame. But to be honest, I think playing 15k heals is really good in the early game, just to be able to control the damage that you're taking. Trying to guard 15, well, trying to guard like a no pass with 10k shield is just not going, right? So I think just being able to find more 15k shields in the early game is just really valuable. Bracing Angel Ladder, you can swap it for the Chalice if you like, but I think the Chalice is in there to accomplish what this deck needs to do, right? You can play a 4th Cage if you find that, you know, you're running like Evergreen, then you can play a 4th Cage, but I think 4th Cage is just too much. 3 is a really nice number, you don't always have to see it. And then Evergreen, that's like the only other Regalis piece that you might want to check in. I think it's just nice to be able to block OTs, but yeah, Chalice, again, probably the best Regalis piece for this deck. So just going to go through some of like the simulation for this deck. Nothing too crazy. I think this deck is very simple, very straightforward. Pretty much if you find Blangdmire like I did here, you're pretty much keeping it. EB cycles in the early game is really good, but you don't really want to overextend with the EB stuff because you obviously want to save it for the Zamug, right? So rolling back, obviously, all the triggers. Servant for Kracia here probably doesn't matter. Let's just say we're going first. So yeah, I don't think it matters too much because you're not proccing the first skill on this turn anyways because it has to attack a grade 3 or greater, right? So bottom deck those, draw 3. Like, you want to see Swirlers. Swirlers is really good because you want to push your opponent to 4, right? All right, let's start the game. Draw 1. Zamug's all right. I guess this is really hard. Like, this is the hard bit, right? Because you want to keep Swirlers. You want to keep the Tiskar for the next turn. I guess, like, you can Zamug on the next turn with CB1. So I guess ditching the crit's okay. So you ride, cool, get a crest, happy days. Yep, and then let's just say your opponent one-lines you, no guard, take 1, stand and draw. Okay, so then you obviously have 3, so you ditch the Tiskar, ride up, and then you use the energy to draw 1, and then you reveal the top 3. That's pretty good. So, like, you know, deck compressing is really good. So you got 2 down, shuffle the rest, and then because you put 2 or more, you draw 1, right? So double Zamuk here is alright. I want to keep the Swirler for the next turn because the Soul Charge 1 by itself is like really good. But then again, if you put it like on a rearguard like 18 against an 8, your opponent's like 15k'ing, or if you put like a booster behind the Vanguard, it's pretty strong, right? So first of all, I'll play the Zamuk anyways. So Canvas 1, then reveal the top 3. That's pretty good. Putting the Clean Sweep in, that's all good. Kracia in, that's all good. Shuffle and then draw 1. Sorry, I won't be able to play that because I have to be on grade 3 or greater. So my bad. So I guess you still keep playing the early game anyways because you want to push your opponent. But I think I don't actually know whether like we brainwash Swirler here or not. I think putting it behind the Vanguard is counterproductive because you want to put the Alchemist there. So if you find like an Evoke here, you put it behind the Vanguard and you swing for 18, your opponent's not guarding the middle, right? If you put 18 on the rear guard, your opponent's 15k for 23, which is kind of annoying. So I think here is okay. If you get 1 damage out, it's pretty good, right? I haven't seen triggers and I've filtered like 1 to 2 cards, so yeah, let's attack with middle. Front's pretty good, like 20k, sure, and then they 15k this, it's like whatever, right? Cool. That's that. Let's just say your opponent, you know, your opponent's Shiranui, they attack, sure. It'd be like what, 10 10 10, right? Or 10 18, 10 23 23. So 10, let's just intercept this. 23, you're not guarding. And then 23 again. I guess you're 15. Yeah, let's just say you drop a 15 for the last one. They put double Shenri in, pretty good, right? Stand and draw. Okay, so here is probably the hard bit, right? Because Zamog draws 1, it's pretty good. Shadow Colossus also draws 1, which is also good. And then the Brainwash Swirler, you know, you put it onto a side where it's big. And yeah, that's winning you the game. So let's just ditch the front. We ride up. The ride line checks top 3. This is where it's really bad, right? You don't get the draw 1, which is yeah a bit abysmal. But we'll put that into Soul anyways, right? Deck compression is pretty good. Then now I can use the Zamug. So Zamug skill, reveal top 3. Like evokes, alright. Double cage is annoying because I do want to see the cage, but it's okay. Shadow Colossus can go here, and then Swirler can soul charge 1. What did we soul charge? We soul charge a crit. This game's +5, right? Really annoying because we don't have evoke. Evoke here would be really good because then I get 4 attacks pushing my opponent to the threshold that I want, right? But obviously that's not the case. So this side is huge. This is like 23 plus 13. It's like 36, right? So if you check a crit you put on this side, your opponent's like forced to put out a PG, which is really strong, right? Okay, anyways, let's continue. So here you can actually EB3 for a crit. So what would that be, like 15, 28. So maybe we put the swirl on this side, right? 28 is like 20k shield. And if you're Shiranui, I guess it's like 20k shield, 1 front. I think that's alright because, you know, if you stack triggers on this side, like your opponent's like GG, right? Okay, so Blangdmire attacks, obviously we don't have evoke. If we did have evoke, then we would restand something. So on attack, you bind. So you obviously want to bind the triggers so that your opponent loses that information. So bind 1, cage is useless in soul, so 2, 3. Yeah, the chalice is also useless, so you bind 4, right? 4 face down. Your opponent retires 2, so they obviously retire the 2 front row rear guards that, you know, they tried to rush us with, which is, you know, already setting them back. This game's +20. Plus 10. Can't count. So +10, 23. Cool, happy days. Check 1. They're not gonna guard, so check 1. Check 2. Crit's pretty good, right? Crit here is really good. So put crit onto Vanguard. So now they're at 3 immediately, right? Let's just say, you know, they're pretty unlucky. They don't hit anything. This then, you know, EB3s. Oop. This EB3s. And then that's like 38, right? So like 15 plus 13, 28, trigger 38. And they're at grade 2, right? Which is yonks, right? So pretty much like if they don't PG here, they're like kind of screwed, right? So they're at 3 already. And they have to guard a 23 afterwards, right? Which is kind of annoying. And like your opponent's hand is like pretty much low, right? Super, super low. So let's just say, you know, they end up PGing this, sure. And then, you know, Shadow Colossus 23, cool. It goes into Soul because of its own ability, and then it binds itself because it went into Soul because of a card's ability, and then you draw one. Right. Cool. And that's that. So that's pretty much the turn. Really wanted the Evoke Alchemist because that would have made one extra card for CB1, but alas. Your opponent dominates. It's like 10k, 10k, so they don't have 10 rays, so I'll take one. Crit's pretty good. And then now they have to attack the back row, right? Cool. And then they go like 15, 15, Vanguard, and then like 33, 33, right? So Tiscar's pretty good. You don't actually use a lot of CB in this deck, so you come us one to draw one. It's pretty good. The other one's like another one, so do I want to expend... This hand's really bad. Like, not having any attacking pieces is really bad, so I think I want to burn the Tiscar. Sure, Falcratia's alright, but no Evoke sucks. Like, no Evoke here is really bad. Let's just say your opponent attacks. Yeah, no guard. They get crit because they're a good player. Take 2. OT is pretty good, so OT is OT. And then, yeah, they can't hit anymore, right? Okay, so stand and draw. Alright, Clean Sweep is alright. So Clean Sweep can pretty much burn their board. But I guess, well, we'll see after the Persona Ride, right? So we Persona Ride, draw 1. Yeah, this hand's pretty bad. Like, not having Zamug feels really bad, right? And not having Evoke is really bad, right? You do want to see some sort of cage, maybe? Like, in the early game, I really would have liked to see a cage, but oh well, you know, it is what it is, right? So in the bin, we have like, what? Just grade 2s, really. So 7 Falcratias hitting for 30. And then Clean Sweep can clear their board. They have like double Furai. Double Furai and like, let's just say a 10 ray. So we can clean that up. And you don't really need anything else, to be honest. So, first of all, let's Swirler. Soul Charge 1. Alright, that's a crit. Kind of unlucky. Gains +5. So if you want to play it as 30... You're not getting any... Because if you Clean Sweep here, you clear 3, so you clear double Furai and the back row. Your opponent's already at like 3. And this is huge, right? So your opponent like has to guard a crit, which is like massive. So this would be like +20. It's like 43 with raw guard, and you already crippled your opponent on the previous turn. And let's just say they got a crit, right? Well, they got a crit the last turn's like 15. 15k shield. 2 15s is 43. They have to drop another 15. And then they essentially can't guard the rear guards, right? So maybe you don't want to Persona Ride this, Divine Skill this turn. But anyways, we're clearing the board anyways. Clean Sweep clears the board. Against +15. Because double Furai is kind of annoying. And then, yeah, like that, right? Because then this will be 43. This is 35. 35 is 2 card guard if they guard with a front and something else, right? If you pop the Divine Skill, you might just win, right? Because if you get a crit, you just dump it on like a rear guard. Like they're spending 3 cards to guard a crit here. So you might actually just win. But yeah, Evoke would have been so good here. God damn. Evoke would have restored the Falcratia. That would have been so good. Anyways, alas. So, Blangdmire attacks. You bind 4. So 1, 2, 3. You want to keep stuff that you want to call, right? So, yep. And then again, it's +20. I mean, depending on how low your opponent's hand is, you might just drop the Divine Skill here, right? Because your opponent's not guarding the middle. But I think with this hand, I actually think I can go through because I burnt 2 Furais, right? This is 43 and he's at like 3 damage. But if I prop the Divine Skill, I guess if I prop the Divine Skill, he doesn't have a Stride Break, which is actually really good, right? So I'm only guarding like 2 cards, well, 3 attacks, right? Actually, so yeah, maybe I do prop the Divine Skill here. So I prop the Divine Skill, so against plus crit, and then obviously your opponent loses all abilities and yeah, yada yada. So let's just say he drops a 3 card, which is, yeah, if he's got stacked with like PGs, it's kind of over, right? So sure, I draw a card because of Blangdmire skill, because I bound. I cleared his board pretty much. So yeah, Twin Drive here, check one, Cage, man, I really wanted that like the previous turn, right? It's like whatever. And then heal's pretty good. He's on 3. So I guess I would have liked a crit, to be honest. But then yeah, his hand's like omega low, so what's that? 30, 43. So I might as just well dump it here. And then let's just heal something. Let's heal this Valkyria for whatever. And like, this is like 40, 43 by putting in a grade 2. Let's put in the Zamug because I might need it for the next turn, depending on what I want to call with the Furious Star. And then 45, right? Your opponent's at 5. He just guarded like the middle. And he has no stride break. Like, what is this guy going to do, right? Let's just say he strides into like, I don't know, Mukuro or whatever. And we just get sent to like, I don't know. Wow, double front's like pretty good, right? Let's just say like he kills some of these units and then we just like dump all of our hand, right? Because, you know, we're guarding these attacks, right? Let's just say we, like that's it. That's their turn. And then stand and draw, right? So here is pretty good. First you Persona Ride, draw 1. Evoke's good. Evoke's really good. I guess Zamug's good here too. I have 6, so I can technically Zamug again on the rear guard. Yeah, right. So I'll Cage, Soul Charge 1. Zamug gains +5. Swirler gains +5 because I Soul Charged. Actually, it's pretty good, right? And my opponent's hand is not insanely great. The only thing is that they can use PGs now. That's the only caveat. But anyways, so attacking boosted first is like 33 and that at 5 damage, right? So we don't use the EB skill, or do we? Do we use the EB skill? It's like 20, 25, 15k shield. The PG, no, because then you want to restand with a +15. Yeah, so you don't want to use the EB skill here. So it's like 33, 2 card guard. And then this is like +2 and +5. So this is, you bind for, doesn't really matter now. Like you're dead next turn. So this is like what, +30? Which is like 73. Is that right? That's crazy. 23 + 30, 53, 53 + 20. Yeah. Is it? That doesn't sound right. Or is that 5k less? These are 15k boosters, 5k less. Yeah, so it's like 68, right? 68, evoke, come +1, restand this, gains +15, right? It's pretty good. So yeah, like I guess like you save 3 EB if you check a crit here, right? Yeah, your opponent like blows up their board, you blow up their board. Yeah, your opponent's like PGing this, sure. Check 1 crit, it's pretty good. 35 is 2 card guard. So like, let's just say your opponent's hand is like pretty garbage, right? It's like there. Yep, cool. And then this EB3's for 40, and this is 35, right? So yeah, that's pretty much how the deck works. Very, very straightforward. Nothing too crazy. I think, you know, this deck is really strong, especially if you know when to use the Divine Skill and when to not. I think using the Divine Skill at a point where it cripples your opponent is much more beneficial to you, and you can actually just get through a turn, right? Like for example, I'd use the Divine Skill to stop Shiranui here, to, you know, not dominate my units, and means I save cards in my hand. So yeah, just know when to use the Divine Skill, and I guess it will work wonders for, you know, you as the player, right? So yeah, that's pretty much the Blangdmire comprehensive guide. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I actually really like the deck at the moment, and really hope to get that new grade 1 PR. That grade 1 PR is pretty spicy for this deck, right? I think it like puts a card into soul or something. So yeah, if you guys like this video, pop a like, comment down below what you guys think of Blangdmire. Have you guys tried it? I think you know, it's worth a try. Definitely a deck that fits with me, and the art looks good, right? Daisuke Izuka's art is always popping, right? If you guys haven't already, click that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.